Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I'm on chess.com and I'm going to do another game review. This is a members game, friends game, between Kid Cobra, rated 1887, and the opponent Ludmila Rostov, rated 1903. As you can see on the right hand side, this is a 10-0 time control game. So let's dive into the analysis and see what we can take away from this one. A couple of things to note right off the bat. The previous game review I did was between two mid 1600 rated players. The game covered was a fairly thorough review, one that touched on all phases of the game. This one I anticipate being a bit more brief. We'll see at the end what the recording time is, but I anticipate it being a bit more brief because I only have a couple key points of emphasis to touch on in the opening and middle game. What about the end game? Well, what about it? It's pretty much over before it begins. This is a 26 move encounter. And, well, on the other hand, as one might expect, the points I will be touching on are more technical. We are, after all, working with two players that are a bit higher rated. Okay, well, with that said, let's see what happened here. E4, C5, Sicilian land. D4, Gambit land, the Smith-Morra Gambit. Black says, okay, I accept. White follows up now with knight to F3, so maybe no longer wants to play Gambit-like, and instead enter simply open Sicilian variation, picking up the pawn now with the knight. There's no issue with knight to F3. The computer has no problems whatsoever. D6. Keep in mind, black cannot try to hang on to this. Well, okay, you could, but white would follow up with C3. That would be the best reply. And there isn't any good justification for black creating these two holes in their position at such an early stage in the game. This is not to be recommended, the move E5. Some players might play this, setting the white side up for a trap. If you take on E5, okay, that's an issue. But if white replies with simply C3, the best move here, black is going to have these two holes on D6 and D5. So what does black play? Black followed up with D6. White has the option to simply scoop the pawn up with the knight, but still wants to steer this game into gambit waters, playing C3 on this move 4. Okay, if black captures on C3, white is happy. White gets what they want, right? This is what they signed up for, playing the Smith-Morra Gambit. They're down a pawn, but they have a lead in development. The knights are in good squares. We have an open C file and a half open D file. Okay. The issue is that black does not capture on C3. What does black do? Black plays knight to F6. The issue for white, is this move right now, because there's a punch being thrown at E4. And how do you address this threat? What should white do to defend E4? Or does white say, you know what, I'll just take this pawn, I'll allow you to take E4, and I'll play another type of gambit position or gambit structure, but one that I'm likely not as familiar with. Okay, this isn't a good direction for white to go in, to play a gambit where this is the structure, an open now C file and half open E file. This is likely not what white is familiar with. They're familiar with that previous position where it was an open C and D file. So what should white do then? If they don't want to play that type of gambit structure, what to do with the E4 pawn is the million-dollar question. I don't know. I don't think that there's a good answer to how to defend E4. Queen takes pawn. You have your pawn on C3 for what reason? Your knight this pawn wants to take on d4. That's not a good idea to take on d4 with the queen to defend e4. Bishop to d3, queen to c2, queen to e2. There's issues with all of those moves. Here, this rook is going to throw a punch at the queen one day. Here, you get in the bishop's way. What is the game move? What did white end up doing? They played bishop to d3. It seems natural enough, right? You just developed and defended. What can be wrong with that? Well, here's what's wrong. The bishop does not belong on d3 when you're playing the Smith-Morra Gambit. Where does it belong? c4. Why? There's a lot of different reasons why. Points at the weakest square, f7. It's a nice diagonal. Eventually, that bishop will be opposite the king. Some good things can happen for white when the bishop is on c4. Also, the d-file. If you are going to have an open d-file, you just don't want your bishop on d3 in the way. There's a quick idea for white to have the rook on the d-file, and it'd be nice to have less white pieces in the rook's way. There's potential ideas of a pin, some pin along the d-file. So maybe best understand the point I'm trying to emphasize here. It's important to know a setup that white wants to get when they play the Smith-Morra Gambit. So let's see what this looks like. e4, c5, d4 takes, c3 takes, knight takes. Let's get some more moves in. Knight c6, knight f3, d6 before knight here, otherwise he gets kicked. Bishop on c4. Knight to f6. Here, I might as well just show you a reason for why the bishop is well placed on c4. One of the reasons, at least. Bishop on c4 can already be allowing for this e5 push. In the event of knight takes on e5, black has already lost. Right? It just seems so natural, right? Put your knights here. But there's this e5 move. If black takes with the knight, it's game over because of bishop takes f7. I'm just showing this variation to highlight. And this is something every Smith-Morra Gambit player, this is probably one of the main traps, let's say, every Smith-Morra Gambit player is familiar with. Or one of the first traps they're shown, let's say. Right, you're deflecting the king away from the queen, and there goes the queen in the game. I just wanted to show, I want to emphasize the power of the bishop on this diagonal, specifically on the c4 square. In the game, the bishop was on d3. You don't want to be on d3. So, just taking out a bit more. e6, castles, knight f6, queen e2, bishop e7, rook to d1. This is basically the setup white is looking for. Okay? Rook on d1, the bishop eventually moves, the other rook is on c1, rapid development is what white has, knights on good squares, bishop on c4, queen on e2. Okay, just giving you an idea for the piece setup white wants. If white wants to get this specific setup in these type of open lines, it's important for the game to begin with e4, c5, d4 takes, and on move number 3, to immediately challenge the pawn with c3. Okay? Because of the move knight f3, d6, and c3, after knight f6, there is not a convenient way to defend e4. And white cannot push the pawn and, let's say, scare the knight away from f6. All white needs to do is change the move order is my main point here. On move 3, it's important to, as a Smith-Morra Gambit player, to immediately challenge the pawn on d4 with a pawn. On takes, now there's no issue defending e4. And in fact, after c3, suppose knight f6 now, well, we have the option to push e5 and chase the knight away. In the game, white doesn't have this option to push e5 and chase the knight away because d6 has already been inserted. In fact, the moves d6 and knight to f3. Okay, so This is what I'm drawing your attention to is just a little bit of move order, right? I could have very easily just shared with you, you know what? As a Smith-Morra Gambit player, on move number 3, play c3. Don't play knight f3. And many of you, I'm sure, would just be satisfied with that. And that's fine, but I want to just go into this detail here to explain the whys, okay, or a why at least. Okay, black can play it like they did in the game, get to this point right here where after c3, after these two moves have been inserted, not capture on c3 but plays knight to f6, and you're just kind of in an awkward spot now. What to do with the attack against e4? White doesn't have this option to push the knight away. So it's a little move order detail that I'm emphasizing here in this opening, in this game, in this specific opening here, the Smith-Morra Gambit. In the game, it was knight to f3, d6, c3, and sadly, white is not going to get the type of setup that they want. Bishop is on d3, not c4, and this makes all the difference in the world. Now black takes only after the bishop is on a much less desirable post. Knight recaptures, knight to c6, and in fact, notice how this this little detail right here is now having a sort of a domino effect on future white decisions. Right, white is now fearing some pin with bishop to g4. Is this something white would have to play if the bishop was on c4? Maybe not. I could show a variation where that wouldn't be an issue. Let's say this variation right here. Knight out, d6, bishop c4. Right? Is there any fear of, let's say, bishop g4 ideas in this position? No. Okay, that's a tactically vulnerable bishop with this specific move order. There's captures on f7 followed up with knight to g5, picking up the bishop next. Okay, so yeah, move 3 at this moment should be c3, and we're seeing again once more this type of domino effect it's having now because the bishop's on c4. Things are, a little bit different. White feels the need now to maybe defend from this type of a pin with bishop to g4. It's not really the type of play you would see. If you're a gambit player, you're an attacking player. You don't really, if you could do without these prophylactic type moves, these preventative moves like h3 to simply stop this pin. Yeah, you should be looking for something else, right? Rapid development is the name of the game in gambit play. Get your pieces out. Okay. After h3, black opts for g6. So this is known as the dragon structure. Going for a fianchetto. Okay, we got some natural stuff coming in now. Castles, bishop to g2, bishop g7, castles, queen to d2. What's the idea that white has with queen to d2? We're going to see that shortly. Knight to e5. This is a fine move. Black played a very good game here. Knight to e5, chop, chop, and now rook to d1. My first impression of rook to d1 was, wait a second. We have these two files. These are the two open files. Open C file. Actually, both are now completely open. Why would you move the queen rook to d1? Why not have it be the f rook go to d1 and your a rook go to c1? White has an idea in mind with this. White will be looking to play f4. So, if that's the plan, I'm not saying it's a good one, but at least if that's the intention white has, okay, I can make some sense. I could understand why you would want to play your rook from A to D1 because white has this follow-up idea of F4, and the F file will soon be opened up. Okay. Bishop to E6, continuing to develop, watches over a nice central square, And now we have bishop to h6. So this is the other, I guess, the other point I really wanted to emphasize in this game. The first one was that middle game, or that opening detail, I should say, the move order nuance, playing c3 on move number 3, not move number 4. This is the other one, this middle game decision. This plan of exchanging dark square bishops is just not a good idea. But I could see how many players would go in for this because they're familiar with this idea out of a different position type. What position type am I talking about? Well, there's a position where you are castled on opposite wings. The white king is on the queen side. The black king is in the same spot on the king side. And in those position types, you do go in for this dark square bishop exchange because you're looking to do what? You're looking to rid black of a super defender of the king side. And once he's eliminated, you then look to attack the king. Let me show you what I'm referring to. And in fact, let me throw on the openings book, and we'll follow this variation here, which is the what I'm going into right now is the Sicilian defense, dragon, and more specifically the Yugoslav attack. It should be popping up that soon enough. F3, castles. I'm just following all these top moves. Yeah, after castles right now, it's officially, they're calling it now the Yugoslav attack. So I'm just arriving at this position where we have opposite sides castling coming up soon enough. There we go. Rook c8, very lengthy variation here. h4, h5, and let's just take it one more. Okay, it's not the next top move, but it's played many a times. What's the idea? Bishop h6, something we're seeing in this game, but under different conditions. The key one being the white king's post. He's on the queen side. Okay? This is a good idea in this position. Okay, white's looking to get rid of this key defender and then throw these kingside pawns up, crack open the position, sack, mate. Okay? In the game, however, just going back to the analysis, in the game, we don't have a case of opposite sides castling. That's not where I want it to be. The game move, I want it to be right after, right here. This is where I want it to be. In the game, we have same sides castling. So what is my point? This idea to exchange dark square bishop is not as effective. In fact, I see it as a just a faulty plan, right? It's just a mini plan, exchange dark square bishops, but it's not played under the correct conditions. Much different if we have a case of opposite sides castling. We're not there. There is not going to be any attack against the black king. It's just how it is. In fact, you might want to view this position as, you know what? This right here, this is my better bishop, and it is. You might want to, in this position, start to look at the more positional features, okay, and value the dark square bishop, as your good guy. Okay, but white goes forward with this exchange, and there is no good, let's say, follow-up idea to attack the king. White may think this follow-up move of f4 is a good idea, but it's really just not working out. After f4, one may reason that this is simply helping Team Black. Why do I say this? Well, after there's no longer a pawn on e5, guess who one day will be able to occupy the e5 square with great effect? The black queen. Black follows up with a check, king h1, and now knight to h5. So many times I'll get questions like, well, after the opening stage, I'm not quite sure, how to follow up. We all get to that point. There are plenty of moments like that in our own games, right? We just don't know how to follow up at a certain point. We get our pieces developed in what plan should we go from, or what plan should we implement from there. A lot of it, in order to formulate or come up with a plan, you look to where your opponent is weak, right? Where is there a weak square? In this position, G3, right? As soon as F4 is played, Black might be saying to themselves, G3 is a hole. Okay, so how can I maybe take advantage of this? Well, knight to H5. It's a forward move. It's throwing a punch. It's observing a great gap in White's camp. Queen to F3. Queen to E5. How do you get rid of this queen? She's fantastic. You cannot chase her away anytime soon. The only piece that can maybe challenge her is the white queen. And, well, let's not forget, White played a gambit here and is down a pawn, is still trying to pursue some type of attack, but it's, sometimes it happens like this. The attack simply is not there. This queen is fantastic, and she's coordinated really well. The knight's ready to pounce on G3 with the fork. White sidesteps that. Knight still jumps in with the punch. Rook F2. And now after Rook A to D8, this is just another thing to know. I questioned this move as well. Just as I did, why did the white rook, queen rook go to the D file? Shouldn't it be the case where Black puts their rooks here and here? I was thinking that it should be this rook that goes to D8. But, Black has another idea. In fact, now that this file is half opened, there may be a reason to keep this rook on F8, to lend support to F7. Okay. Rook A to D8 on board. White doubles on the D file. And now F5 strikes. This is really good, as you can see by the evaluation. Black played in a really good game. And a lot of the concern, this deployment with the bishop on D3 played a big role, had a bit of a domino effect. He's on a poor diagonal, and then, H3, this a bit of a soft preventative move was played. Okay. Takes, bishop takes, queen takes B, and this game is pretty much over now. Bishop takes bishop. This one goes right on to checkmate. I guess we could call this endgame-like, but like I said, it's pretty much over before it begins. There's not much to it at all. Rook takes D, rook takes, and now simply a mate in 2 with rook to F1. And now rook to H1 for mate. So as mentioned, not too much going on with the endgame. The points of emphasis with this one, much more technical, related to a move order nuance, specifically in this Smith-Morra Gambit opening. And also this, what else? That middle game idea. In the Yugoslav Attack, where you have opposite sides castling, sure, you could see this idea to exchange dark square bishops and then launch pawns towards the enemy king to open up files. But that's in what case? Under what condition? Opposite sides castling. And that wasn't the situation we were working with. So you could see many players being confused by something like that, where you just go in, you see it in one variation, exchange dark square bishops, hoping for an attack. White in this game was still looking for an attack, but the conditions simply were not right for that. And Black also, it's important to note, Black played a very good game straight out of the opening and even in the middle game. So anyhow, as usual, feel free to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. As always, I hope you got something out of it, and I will catch you soon. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.